Hey guys, it's a very special episode of Dialogue Options once again, elevating the dialogue around games and gaming. I'm here today with Vali Fujula, a creative director on a game with a name I love. It's called I Love Potatoes. Vali, thanks for joining us today.
I'm very happy to be here.
Now, first off, I want to talk about the way this game came to be, because you did it as a residency with the National Film Board. So National Film
I
Board,
know.
video games, not the first thing people think of. So how did you get involved with this project?
Actually, I got a residency at the National Film Board here in Montreal, but I'm from a documentary background and a filmmaking background. But I decided I wanted to be a resident in the interactive studio. For the last 5 years, the NFB has been really exploring new narratives and in which way we can relate and we can tell stories and engage audiences using all these new interactive medias. So I'm really interested in that. And I got to the NFB with a WebDoc project, but my WebDoc had sort of a game interface and a game packaging. And the more my project evolved, the game aspect of it was taking more and more space. And my producer, who's really Hugues Sweeney at the National Film Board in French, is really into exploring all the new narrative forms. So he said, well, if you're really into the game side of things, why don't we make a game? And he really thinks that, I mean, games have been around for much longer than any other interactive medium. And he really believes that games are part of that future generation of, storytelling and engaging audiences. So we both were really excited to say, well, we're making NFB's first video game in 3D. And obviously we weren't going to do that by ourselves because we don't have the experience. But the NFB has been really open to trying this new medium. They want to get into video games.
Now, being the first, the joke from the off-color joke from my TV days, where the first guy in always gets bloody, with anything new, any new technology, was that the experience? I mean, you're building a prototype essentially in more ways than one. Were there some surprising things that you encountered?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
I can tell you that once we decided that my project was going to be a full-on game, we went looking for the production company that was going to produce the game with us and create the game with us. And we found Minority here in Montreal, who are great game creators and who have a sensibility that,
Yes.
I mean, they're really close to cinema. They take from the narrative techniques of cinema to build their games. And our DNA was compatible, like I wanted to make an author game with content and a message, and they're really into author games as well. So we connected and they did the production. So I was really guided and taken in, and I learned a lot with these guys who are super pro and have been doing this forever. But the first clash was when I started talking with Ruben Faris, my co-creator and game designer
Full
on I
disclosure,
Love
we love
Potato.
Ruben. Hi,
We
Ruben.
love
We love
Ruben!
Ruben. Yes.
I know. He's a great
I
game
can't
designer.
imagine anybody clashing with Ruben. So what
No,
happened?
but it was a nice clash in the
Okay,
sense
good.
that we realized that we were using the exact same terms, but in completely different ways.
So it was a lost in translation thing. You were using
It
the film
was.
terms, he was using the video game terms.
Yeah, but they're the same
Yeah.
terms. Like we'd talk about reality, for example. And for me as a documentary filmmaker, reality is real people, real stories, interviewing people on the ground. And for Ruben, reality was,
Immersion.
that immersion
Immersion, yeah.
and being in a world that feels real. And so all these, we began, and it was his idea by listing all these terms that we were both using, like learning, audience, success, message. And we realized that we were talking the same language, but not with the same background. So once we got that clear, we could move forward. It was a small clash, obviously, it was a fun clash, but it was just like realizing that we come from different universes, and we were like two crazy parents from different backgrounds trying to have a kid together.
Well, I mean, you're also making a product for kids, which is a whole
Yeah.
new degree of challenge, which I love kid
Hmm.
games for that reason because, I mean, one of the things Minority broke away from was the using blood and guts to sell a game. They don't do that. They have to create tension and drama with different things. And I mean, the way you did it in I Love Potatoes is you created sort of this central figure of a monster that it was almost like it's like kawaii, the Japanese tradition of kawaii, but at the same time it was sort of abstract and esoteric and weird, almost like a SpongeBob SquarePants kind of thing. And I'm like, this is a game that understands kids instead of talking down to kids. Was this a deliberate goal for you not to talk down to kids?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I started being interested in video games when I had kids myself. My older one is 15 right now, and like 10 years ago when he started playing little video games, I was like, "Oh my God, I hate this. What is he doing? Why is he into this?" These are, I mean, I was really ambivalent in my feelings towards video games, and with them growing up, I really got into it as a player, as a mom who was following their learning and the stupid quote unquote empty games like I won't name any, but
I think we all
I
sort of know the type of game
yeah,
you're talking about.
and the really great ones and the artistic ones and the educational ones. And so I really got into the head of my kids, I think, to do this. And the actual title, I Love Potatoes, came from my youngest one who was obsessed with potatoes when he was 9. And for a whole year, he was with his friends like, I love potatoes. And I thought, I'll just start from that age group and what they love and what makes them laugh, and I'll build from there. I had my message or my subject, and I had, the language that they were using. So I feel like a kid, and I have kids, and I really, it was a great experience to put myself into the head of a kid and try to talk with them and have a discourse. Because, I mean, let's face it, they're not watching TV, they're not watching cinema. It's hard to get them engaged in the traditional forms that I used to make. And I thought if I want to speak to my own kids, I need to speak to them through what they're consuming. And I think we all need to do that, definitely.
Now, when you say the empty games, it sounds like you have a lot of dialogues with your kids. Did you ever hit a point where what was empty to you is actually quite meaningful to them?
Um, no, I
Okay, so
think
your
that
kids are
they're
very
really,
evolved. Yeah.
no, I mean, we had discussions. What I mean to say is that they know that some games are just sort of like to empty their heads.
All right.
And as I will watch some television that I know is kind of vacuous, but it helps me release stress or whatever. It helps me clear my mind. And they realize that it's the same for them with certain games. Certain games will talk to them or engage them differently. And I don't say this pretentiously, like there's all forms of games, and that's fine. A game should be fun, but sometimes a game can make you think, or a game can make you laugh, or a game can just make you relax. And so our goal was to make a really fun game that would make you think. But my kids know the difference when they play certain games. They're like, oh, mom, this is your kind of game where it has a message and you can sort of learn things and feel things. And this sort of game, maybe you won't like so much, but I like it. So we have a discussion, ongoing discussion about what they consume. And I really think that a lot of creators should look into that. A lot of my friends have kids and they've never played the games that their kids play. And I think we have to get interested as creators to make them, make those games, or at least get interested in what they really love and what they consume.
Why do you think that is that people are so hesitant to try video games?
Um, I think, speaking from my point of view, I think when I was growing up, I felt that the games were not made for me, and they probably weren't. I was not competitive. I hated those games where you needed to like hit it harder and harder to get to the other level. I wish there would have been other kind of games, like the games that my kids play now. I think I would have gotten into as a kid. So I think it's just a generational thing where, I mean, maybe a lot of women felt like these games were not really meaningful to them or were not really made for them. And I don't want to be cliche. I know a lot of women like Counter-Strike or whatever. A lot of women like the boys' games, quote unquote.
Hmm.
But I really think that a whole generation skipped it. And I think people see the cliche of the games. They're reluctant because they think it's all violence, it's all guns, it's all meaningless. And so and so they abandon their kids in front of the PlayStation. And it's really tempting in a way to do that. It's like, oh yeah, go play your game and I'll just, do the dishes. But minorities really been talking to me about this also. It's like the more scary the game is to you, you should be there and play it, or at least sit next to your kids and look at what they're doing and try to feel and connect. So I advise all parents or friends who've got younger siblings or whatever to play, to sit down and play and engage in the discussions.
Yeah. No, I mean that whole thing about games not being for you. It's funny because in the history of games, in the 80s, they were interested in getting women into the arcades because it was a date night thing in certain parts of the world. But then that sort of slipped when the consoles came in. And that, I mean, obviously begs the question. You were a woman that, oh, everybody starts screaming the minute it's women in games, but you didn't play games growing up, but you had an interest in them. So I'd like to talk to you about that and your experiences so far with video games and with the video game community. How's that been for you?
The experience of playing games got to me very late when, again, I had kids and started getting interested in what they were playing. I had a very friendly environment to learn about making a game because I mean, half of my team was women. Ooh,
Yeah, what? Yeah.
what? Yes, we were a very small team. Um, and I mean, there's all sorts of different places to make games and different companies. And I have to say, minority has been, I mean, there are different kinds of artists, men and women. It's very open, and they're very open-minded to this sort of weird NFB process of mixing people from different backgrounds. My illustrator had never done a video game, right? Patrick Doyon, he's a traditional animator and illustrator. And so we mixed all these different people and they were open to it. So I felt welcome. I mean, it's been a great experience.
What
I don't know
about
if that
your,
answered your question.
yeah, what about your composer? Had he done video games before?
Uh-uh.
No.
So me being like, it was my game or it was my first idea,
Mhm.
the illustrator and the music guys had never done a game before. So we all learned a lot in the process. It was, in some ways, being a director for now almost 20 years, I mean, I know that medium quite well. So it was shocking to find out that I thought I knew some things in video games, and I did not. Thank you, Ruben, for teaching me everything. I knew how to write dialogue, but obviously not in the context of games. So
Without the
all
branch,
of
yeah,
us,
yeah,
yeah, all
without the
of us
branches.
had this learning curve, and we were guided really well. And I think we all loved it, and we're gonna do it again. Because I mean, for the music guys, for example, they're used to working in linear
Yeah.
composing, so suddenly they have to work in loops, and they got it really fast. But still, in the making of it, in the subtleties, they had to have a lot of adjustments. Patrick for the design. Patrick, he's an illustrator, an animator, traditional. He was nominated for an Oscar a couple of years ago, and he animates flat, right? 2D everything. So he had to conceive of his designs in a 3D world. But he played a lot of games when he was young, so he had sort of the idea of the mechanics like building the monster. Um, I had the whole idea of the mechanics, but he had to integrate them into his drawings. So it was a great experience of newbies and very experienced people creating together and having fun with these crazy characters.
Now, you're sort of defying expectations in a lot of ways because most people are like, oh no, you have to have a bunch of games under your belt before you can be the creative director of a video game, and outsiders don't understand. You guys have created a really fun product. I enjoyed it, and we'll get to the social justice angle in a bit, but that's not why I think a lot of people are going to play this game. They're going to play it because it's fun. So how do you feel about this idea that film and video games are separate streams and they can't cross? It's almost like a Ghostbusters paradox that, don't cross the streams,
Yeah.
don't cross the streams. Oh, we crossed the streams and won the movie sort of thing. So do you think this is a false separation between media?
I don't think it's false in the sense that video games and cinema have very different tools.
Sure.
The toolbox that you're leaving with to build the actual product is very different. But I think we must learn from each other. And I had the chance to do that now. Um, I think Ruben and Minority have taken a lot from cinema. Maybe not from me because they did the experience before, but in the way of structuring with narratives, with three acts, using dialogue, using some of the uh, structure or cathartic moments that you can feel in cinema, different camera angles. I mean, it's all sort of subtleties that, I mean, these are tools that you can bring into video games. And for me to know the interactive tools now, I think is a great addition to my traditional linear work. I mean, I've got three toolboxes now or four, and I really think those worlds should cross more, definitely.
How was
And I
it? Oh,
mean,
sorry.
those two worlds, no, sorry, they snob each other, right? The
Yeah.
filmmakers are like, oh, video games,
Yep.
whatever, whatever. Like, they don't understand how powerful of a medium it is for transformation. And yeah, they snob it, I have to say.
Yeah, you see a
They
lot
don't
of
get it.
it's a video game in film reviews, and it's always a pejorative. It's always an insult. And that drives me crazy because it's like, well, video games borrowed, as you said, from action films. So of course there's going to be a loop.
Yeah.
And that bothers me as well, the snobbing, because it's like, well, it's not as cut and dried. The spheres are not as separate as you think. But in terms of development, you're right, it is very different. So the obvious question is, how did you adapt to that loop, that massive change? Because I know when I've done documentaries, you've got to get it all right off the top, and then you work with what you have. Whereas games, you take it and you see what you have, and then it's more like baking to me in a lot of ways. The first batch doesn't come out so well, and you learn and you adjust the recipe.
Yeah.
How was
It
that for you, changing?
it was great. I mean, we did a talk at Games for Change, Ruben and I explained that for me, filmmaking, traditional filmmaking is like a sprint race where you start and you film and then you pass the puck or whatever the the stick
Mhm.
to somebody else who edits and then somebody else and then somebody else. So it's really a relay run. As a game is like everybody leaves and runs at the same time really fast. So I was writing, Ruben was designing levels, the programmer was programming, the sound was being done. Everybody runs, starts at the same time and finishes at the same time. And it looks like not much until like 2 days before we're all done. I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. This is gonna look so bad. Nothing's working. And then 2 days before the end, everything blooms. As you know, as a filmmaker, once you've shot your film, you you know pretty much what you have, and then the steps are like one after the other. So game making is a sprint, and we all run together. And a lot of filmmakers say, oh, this is my film. What I was like, I've never felt that way, like being the top of the hierarchy. I hate that thing. But still, that's how you view directors usually. But in a game, like it might have been your film, but it's not your game. it's everybody's game that's working on it. It's very collaborative, very horizontal. And I mean, it was a crazy challenge for me at first because I didn't get it. I'm like, okay, so everybody has a really strong opinion and they're very involved and whoa, how am I going to deal with like it's like having eight editors,
Yeah.
or eight directors of photography, and they're all super important and they're all creating this with me. It was a lot to manage, but Ruben was the great how do you say he would make sure everybody had the same vision at the end of the
He's a
day.
great facilitator. He really is.
He is.
Yeah.
That's a great word. So, I mean, it all worked really well, but I mean, I was distressed by the fact that I had to write my script in Excel, for example.
Oh, because you had to, right. It's more
I,
like doing a commercial in that way.
it is, or just, I mean, you have to ultimately work with code. And so, me being from, a script writing, directing background, I love that thing, that romantic thing about writing your script, and you write your script and it's so beautiful, even if it's on a computer. And now they were like, please use Excel, and this is the line of code. Monster happy dash 01.
Right.
Then you write your dialogue in an Excel sheet. And to me, that was like shocking
Yeah.
because I had to adapt. Those are all the tools. Eventually, everything has to become code. So it didn't feel so romantic at
Well,
first.
you're
It
also,
felt like, ooh,
it feels like you're breaking a rule as well because when you write fiction for film, you're not supposed to put in those director's notes. You're not supposed to say, sarcastically or this or that. You're supposed to use that in teeny, teeny, tiny doses. And in gaming, they have to know what expression to give the character.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
it's
you
a
have to code everything. So it was shocking to me at some point. But all in all, I mean, at the end, I was super happy to have had those little shocks. But definitely, the work is very different. And I had the chance to make a game, even though I didn't work for games for 20 years, and it was like put myself in a bath of new inspirations and let's just do it.
see.
That confrontation was creative.
I'm so excited by this project just because my theory is, that question of how do we attract women to video games? Well, we pull women in from other creative pursuits who have the basic production skills, who know how to make something. Because,
Yeah.
there's that thing, the best game is a shipped game. But that's true of film as well. The best documentary is a shipped
Hmm.
documentary. The best short film is a completed short film. So many people
You're
don't
so
finish
right.
things. Yeah.
I know. So having productions behind me, I guess, for the last 15 or 20 years, I knew I could do this. I
Yeah.
just didn't know how. And I needed the help and the co-creation. And it was wonderful. It suits my personality also to share that creation. I mean, bouncing back and forth with Ruben was just so much fun. Like
Yeah.
we're missing it already.
Well, Minority's great as a studio that way. You've seen Vander's Couch, I'm assuming.
Oh, of course. I lived on Vander's couch
You
for
got
a
to
while.
live on Vander's Couch. For people who don't know, watching this, Vander Caballero, the head honcho of Minority, he doesn't have an office so much as he has a couch. And
Mhm.
that's awesome that you got to live on Vander's Couch. That's amazing.
I
It's
borrowed it
To
here and there.
me, that's a symbol of that company. That the main guy doesn't have that power office with all the awards behind him. He's in this, red couch with, is the giant frog still there on it?
Yes,
Like,
with the dog,
yep,
the real dog,
yes.
always sleeping next to him. And Vander and I had lots of conversations during the year that my project lasted on what it means, this new interactive way to tell stories. What are the tools? What are the things we borrow from cinema? What's where's the power is? I mean, we had endless conversations, so it
Well,
was very inspiring.
he's bullish both culturally and sort of, professionally on the magic realism route as well,
Yeah.
which is in all the games. It's definitely in I Love Potatoes. You sort of combine that. Okay, there are certain things from our world that we can relate to, the cities and the mayor and the factories and all that stuff. But then there are other things you just sort of have to, all right, this is an economy based on potatoes, feeding them to a monster that pukes out stuff. And you can't think about that too hard. But the thing I found amazing is you had this instant consumerism metaphor that was set up in like 30 seconds because you didn't have to explain all of it. Was that conscious, or was that part of those loops that it just sort of happened?
Well, that was conscious because at the beginning, the monster was going to be a factory, and then the monster came in, it was the first symbol. Ruben insisted that we work with a metaphor because my subject could have been really dry. I mean, it's a boring, hard subject.
We'll
Social
get to that. We'll
innovation.
get to that. Yeah.
But I know. Okay, so then we decided to have a metaphor, and having a metaphor of our society. I mean, it's hard to find symbols to represent what we live every day, but we had this idea that there was a central character that would embody whichever society you live in,
Yeah.
whether it's consumerism based or social based or whichever society you live in, the monster would symbolize the balance of the society and the economical system and how we can get screwed.
I,
And
and I
so it's consumer bias because that's where I live, but somebody from a different society that doesn't consume so much I think, could relate with that symbol.
Well, that's what I found so amazing because with the number of languages, you're in how many languages this game is localized to?
We're 7 languages. We're in 7 languages, so you can love potatoes in French, English, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, German, and Quebecois. Like I wrote originally in Quebec slang, so it's really fun for the for the francophones because they can choose French or Quebecois, and there's all
Because
this
the idioms aren't the same.
they aren't.
Yeah.
And I wrote it in slang because some of the characters speak really badly.
Yeah.
Not badly, but I mean they speak like
It's like
in slang.
Cockney. It's Cockney. Yeah. It's a
It
patois.
is.
Yeah.
It is. So I kept that. My producer was into that. So 7 languages, yeah.
So Quebecois is now its own language.
Well, it's always been, but it's
Yeah.
fun for the local public in Quebec. They read the game. They're like, "Oh my God, this is in my slang," and it's so it really touched people here, actually.
It's true because I read a lot of French comics, but like French, like Yoann Safar, European French. And
Yes.
then with my Quebecois friends, when they post things in French, I'm like, wait, okay, the other French now, like it's not the same thing. And I think a lot of people outside of Canada don't realize that it definitely is. It's like Canadian Creole
Yeah.
almost in some ways. Now, the localization of that, when you stripped it to different languages, there are some colloquialisms in the English version that
There
they
are.
don't translate into French, and some of the Quebecois idioms don't translate. They're just when you
I
try to
know.
explain it, it just ruins it. So, did you have to go through and rewrite the slang for each language?
Well, we worked with wonderful translators,
Okay,
and I really explained the different characters. They were like co-script writers almost at some point because
that's
I
interesting.
explained the jokes in French, and I would give them background on the character, like Tuberosa, the older woman. She speaks in what we call Péroniste in Quebec,
Hmm.
and it's based on this guy, this hockey dude, who always confuses on TV here. He always confuses two different expressions. So Mamidon or Tuberosa in English, the character in the game, she always confuses these expressions. So I had to explain that, and the translators adapted to their local situations and local jokes. And I mean, to me, the test was when friends played it in Spanish and started laughing, and I was like, okay, this is the jokes and the puns and the localisms are working for other cultures.
Yeah, well, I mean that metaphor of the monster for consumerism, I was amazed at how universal you actually manage that because a factory might, relate to some people, but you have sort of the consumerism with the electronics for up here in the US, but then in places I've been in, like South or Central America, just the piles of junk on the side of the road. It was very
Yeah.
evocative of that. Was that something that went into your concept, or was it just the sheer nature of working with a team who is so diverse and from so many places? Was it just their bits of their culture coming in because you had 8 different art directors?
No, we had, I mean, it was really coming from Ruben and I during our
Okay.
brainstorm sessions. Once we started working in production, that's when we were the bigger team. But we brainstormed for 6 months, just Ruben and I, and we wrote the story. And our goal was to, I mean, Ruben really wanted to make what's he called sugar-coated medicine, so that the game was very inviting, very cute, very fun. And then once you're in the game, the message or the reflections would be given to you. But first, it had to be fun, easy, inviting. And so the monster metaphor, we really thought about it together. And you don't know how some of those crazy ideas happen. You just wake up one morning saying, "Oh, it's going to be a monster." But we did feel like it was a universal theme. And even if you, in countries where you don't own many things
Hmm.
or you don't have very much money, exchanges between people, I mean, it always happens. Even if you're consuming rice in exchange with for a goat, I mean, this is universal. Economy is universal, whether it's, ours or third world, or it's very diverse, but everybody can relate to, getting goods to eat, getting shelter, getting bricks to build your house. So, and the potatoes are a staple in many countries. It's sort of a basic staple. So, using potatoes to represent money was kind of natural in a way. Every culture knows potato.
Yeah, that's potatoes, the universal translator. um,
No way. Yeah.
in a way, the way you handled the social messaging or the social justice messaging, I really enjoyed because, like you said, it's it seems very subtle off the top because it almost plays those mechanics off you at the beginning. You have all these luxury goods that you never actually be able to afford, things like that.
Yeah.
You only give people 80 potatoes and there's stuff that's 1200 potatoes, and I didn't get till the end that, oh, that was actually a subtle message. And the way kids, essentially kids, those little gnome guys, did something on the local level. But your messaging all through was very realistic as well. Like there's not a lot of money in it, and you can't do it alone, and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think people don't realize that's actually teaching kids how to be community organizers. And that subtlety was something I really enjoyed. But then you get a completely new take on things, and I don't want to spoil it for people, but once you complete the game, everything takes on a very different dimension. Was that How much of that was your original vision going in, and how much of that was informed by learning how games work and how people interact with games and how you have to
Mm,
have that fun first, and it's got to be something that isn't hitting people over the head every second?
exactly. It was a learning curve for me because I wanted to make this project because I met real people that have been involved in relieving poverty and
Hmm.
working with their community. We call them social innovators, but really they're people who change the world with new ideas. And it could be a small idea, it could be a big idea, but these are people that are actually making change happen with small steps. And I studied them in real life, and we examined their lives to see what sort of steps do these people go through when they're faced with a problem, whether the problem is there's no more fish in my pond, or there's garbage in front of my house on the street, or my whole country's economy is crashing.
Yeah.
What are the steps that people go through when they're faced with wanting to change something in their environment? And we realized that out of the 12 or 15 real persons that we studied,
Hmm.
that they were all going through those same steps, like anger, revolt, finding an ally, then having a first idea. So all these steps, when Ruben first saw them, I did that on my own, the research.
Hmm.
And when Ruben saw the steps, the real life steps, he said, Well, this is like the path of the hero,
Yeah.
literally. It was, we didn't make it happen. It was just written in front of us.
Isn't that
So we
interesting?
decided to take those real steps. There were 12 of them, and to make those steps what you were going to live in the game. And at first, as a documentary person, I really wanted to have some little video clips popping up during the game, maybe explaining some of the real things that had inspired the game and the real people or the real situations. So I wanted little videos popping up, and then we had huge discussions over that on should you
Don't
stop.
break that. Don't stop the
Yeah,
gameplay. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Or can you do that? I mean, Never Alone did it beautifully. Like there's ways to do it, but my first reflex was to do it as a filmmaker, to boop, pop up a video, and then I thought, yeah, it doesn't really work because, and then Ruben, we talked about this a lot. So I found a different solution, which is at the end of the game, where I don't know if it's such a spoiler, but I think I can say it.
It's your
that at,
game, so you can spoil anything you want.
oh, thank you. It's not a big spoiler. It's just that at the end of the game, you see the real people. You
Yeah.
meet the real people that have inspired the characters and the situations. So it actually links you to reality. And I think that those subtle steps that you're living through the game, I mean, they're not super obvious. You can't say, like, oh, I'm at step 3 and I just found out that I need an ally. But we believe, Ruben and I, that going through this path, if then in real life perhaps you have this challenge, you might remember some of the things that Tuberosa said to you, or, I mean, to get organized, to get friends, to have your community involved. Those ideas might have been planted in your head by the game. But obviously, it's not educational, like you didn't step 2, wow, you made it, you now learned this. It's much more subtle than that. And it's an experiment, right? We're not sure that we're actually achieving exactly what we wanted, but the kids get the message, definitely. And when we ask them, what is the message you get? They tell it to us in their own words.
Good.
And to me, that's like winning an Oscar.
Yeah. My favorite line in the whole game was failure is just a lesson. And
It is.
that's a frustration I have with the community, the social innovation community organizing that I work on, is there seems to be two major stumbling blocks now. One is that angry revolt period is so crushed by, oh, no, no, be nice, be nice. There's such an pressure on kids to be nice and never rock the boat, that I think it gets in the way of innovation. Kids are so afraid of anger, and anger is so bad, that they run around chasing their tail instead of saying, I'm pissed off, this is valid, I'm going to do something about this. The second thing I thought was really cool is, well, for that idea that you do need other people. You can't do it alone, that sort of lone
Mm-mm.
gunman myth, you dispel that. But also that fact that you are going to fail
You
and
are.
people aren't going to like you. It's not popular to change things.
I know, but I mean, from my personal point of view, the reason I wanted to make this project to begin with is that I think that as a kid myself, I was really angry, as you say, at seeing people on the street not having food.
Yeah.
And that it still makes me angry to this day. But I've always felt like this heavy burden on my shoulders where, oh my God, it gets me so upset, but I can't do anything about it. It's too big. The world is a big, huge mountain of problems, and I
Mm-hmm.
cannot do anything. And I realized when I met these people in real life that were doing the changes that small gestures could have a snowball effect. And it sounds cliche, but it's true. There's a lot of people that took their anger and that energy and turned it into action. The wrong thing is just being angry and
Right.
criticizing or being disillusioned. And I think kids at that age still have those feelings of like, whoa, this is not just. Why should my society be like this?
Yeah.
This is wrong. And then just to tell them, yes, you can act.
Yeah.
Don't be scared. Get a friend, work out one idea, one simple little idea. Then maybe get other people and try your idea. It fails. big deal. You always going to fail.
Yeah.
The first idea always or almost fails. You have to rework your idea. Like on the website with the game, we go a little bit more in depth of how you can do social innovation. And, Tuberosa says, if your cake recipe doesn't work the first time, are you going to stop eating cake for the rest of your life? No, you're just going to you redo a different
Yeah.
recipe, work on the recipe, get it better next time. So I just feel like a lot of times we're discouraged by our trials and we stop there as really we should. And I'm talking to me also. Just rework it.
Hmm.
Keep eating cake, right? Redo the recipe.
Yeah, but I mean, part of it is the funding models don't allow that. You have to show productivity and results, and
It's true.
failure is a result. It's a learning experience, and it's like, all right, this part worked, this part didn't. And that, to me, they're important building blocks, and I think that what I love about this message, it kind of gave me some hope as sort of a tuberosa myself of one of the, on the older spectrum of I was there, you kids know nothing, in my day, I'm like, I really like that character because it's like, yeah, I see a lot of myself in her. But, it gave me hope that because I do see a lot of that disillusionment and that running around chasing their tail, just angry and criticizing, but not feeling empowered to do
Yeah.
anything. I think we do sort of have to send the message young that you can have a positive impact on your community, even if it's small. Sometimes it's better if it's small, I think, because
A
then,
lot of times.
yeah,
Like this kid in my neighborhood just started planting little flowers at the bottom of the trees on the sidewalk. And in 3 years, it just created a whole movement in Montreal of like streets that are much greener in my neighborhood. But it was this kid's project at school. And he just thought, hey, why don't we do this? It was so simple. And social innovation is always that. It's like, oh, it was so simple. Why didn't we think about it before?
mhm,
It's just thinking outside the box, thinking with your head upside down. I mean, you can't solve the old problems with the old solutions. So basically, think about it another way. Use the potato peels. The potato peels are whichever resource that might be around. It might be time. It might be
yeah.
people that have energy to give you. The potato peel symbolizes whatever's not being used well in around you that you can use to solve your problem. So you have to play the game to understand. But I mean, right now, I think the small gestures mean the most. And the agents of change right now are not politicians, although it's election day. And they're not having these massive protests.
Yeah.
These don't work anymore. So it's putting more pressure on individuals somehow. But the real agent of change right now is you and me and everybody who can make a small difference. And sometimes, I mean, you get major change in your society. So I made this game to be an idealist, an optimist, to tell kids like I'm talking to me also as a kid, remembering I really wanted to change things. I really wanted to make a difference. Well, why don't I? Why don't I just
Hmm.
do it?
Hmm.
So that's the message.
Now, the game is available free through the National Film Board website on the Google Play Store and the App Store on Apple.
Yes. You
What's
can also play on your browser, in your browser. There's a browser-based version.
Yes, yeah, I played that, and then I'm like, no, I want this on my phone because I want to play it
Yeah,
before I go
for
to sleep.
sure.
Yeah, because it's nice and sort of calming before I go to sleep. But what's next? What's next for this project? Are you gonna, obviously, you're gonna keep on the social innovation theme, but
Yes.
where do you see this going?
I really hope this goes to schools
Okay.
because it's not an educational game, but I mean, the NFB's education sector is really pushing for it to be in classrooms because I think it's a great excuse for teachers to start little projects with their students or to have a reflection and a discussion about this. But I mean, obviously, I want the game to be in the homes because that's where it should be. So we just launched it. I think. I mean, to me, if a lot of kids play it, I'll be super happy because I think it's just planting a little seed about that issue in their heads. And the more widespread it can be, well, obviously I'll be very happy.
Yeah, I mean, I realized how influential this game was on me now was the game Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, which was played in schools and wasn't developed as educational software, but it ended up in schools because it had that geographic component. But just the idea of this female villain, sort of this glamorous female villain, made me go,
Yeah.
maybe there's another thing I can be that isn't, the good girl. And that wasn't the message that was intended, but it hit me at that, 8, 9 years old sort of thing. And it's amazing what sticks. It's amazing with kids.
I know, and I'm hoping to be one of the little blocks that will, shape their year, shape their month, that they will stick with it. And so far, we've had really good response, but it's the beginning of the life of the game right now.
Awesome. All right, Valia, thank you so much for your time and your discussion. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. It was wonderful to talk to you.
And I love potatoes. How do I get a t-shirt? This is I love potatoes.
Oh, okay. You have to talk to, I know the person you have to talk to. I'll write to you.
Yes, because I want it. I love potatoes too.
We have tattoos. We have temporary tattoos that we can send you also.
Sweet.